Alright, I'm here. Let's get ready to go. How are you guys doing? We're gonna try this again. Oof. So, Tuesday, we tried to jump into the stream and do about, not giving out this gold and the 3 different ways, different types or categories of loot that I use in my D&D games. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about that. Immediately start streaming. ISP goes, nope, we're going down. So, it's been fun. Internet going out is always fun. So we're going to try to do this again. So this is our redux. Sorry for the failure to launch. In addition to that, I have been drinking this new, or at least new to me, coffee. And it is interesting. It is, I had somebody bring it back to me from their trip on Greece. The coffee is very different. It's got a very different taste profile, but in addition to that, the grind is very interesting. It's incredibly... This is like a coffee tangent right off the bat. Very, very much kind of jumped in and it was very much like, okay, this opened it up and the bag is so finely ground that it looks maybe even finer than an espresso grind. And I'm like, is it supposed to be espresso? No, it's coffee. But trying to use it with my pour over is a giant pain, and I burned my hand while I was just prepping for this. Hey, what's going on? I see you. Alright, so anyways, we're gonna get back into the loot aspect. This will be really fun. I think we'll have some opportunities to show some stuff, I think, from my upcoming session, because I got my prep already done. So we got our prep as well as we got some extra little goodies that I'm giving out, some little custom magic items and whatnot. So this is a good opportunity to talk about it, which I didn't have prepared. So it's almost serendipitous that we have waited this long. But we're doing this quick, so there's gonna be a little bit of talking heads, and then once at that, then I'll go in and show off some of the documents that I use when I run and how I determine treasure and loot and all that stuff. So let's start off with stop giving out gold. So gold is a very interesting problem in D&D in general, especially what I would say non-OSR D&D. In OSR D&D, gold makes total sense. You grab the gold because you want the gold. Why do you want the gold? Because the gold is your experience points. You get the gold, you get your experience, you get your levels. Now, when that changed and XP now changed in sort of like what I would call the middle era of D&D, now experience is primarily gotten through defeating monsters. Monsters are things that give you most XP. So gold already started to be less important, because now it's not tied directly to your ability to be powerful as a player character or to your progression through that. But if we could move even further, it's still useful in those middle levels, especially what I would call kind of the center, particularly around 3rd edition and I guess to a lesser degree 4th edition, is that there is a magic item economy. It's like you get money, you can spend that to purchase magic items. Now we move into contemporary D&D, or where we are right now. 5th edition forward, we look at it, and even coming out of 4th edition, there was this idea that people were trying to, with the inherent bonus system, try to get away from like characters feeling like they were mostly a collection of magic items. Mostly a collection of magic items and feats, which is 3rd edition play can very much feel like that sometimes. And you roll into 5th edition 5.5, where they're like, you don't need magic items. I mean, they say that in a lot of editions, that you don't need magic items, but it's like you definitely do. Not as much now in 2024. Now they've changed so many of the monsters that so many of the monsters don't just have baseline resistance or immunity to non-magical damage. So that's nice. That's one of the better changes that I like out of the 2024 revamp. So I like that aspect of it. But you still kind of need it. But the problem with 5th edition 5.5 is that they went out of their way to be like, there is no magic economy. You can't really buy anything. You're not supposed to be able to buy anything inherent other than common level magic items. So that's when they then had, with like Xanthar's Guide, they had to put more common level magic items in that did things like give you the ability to purchase a magic sword that was a common item. Because especially with 5th edition, so many of the monsters have that baseline resistance to non-magical BSP that if you were playing a melee character, you're just not going to get through it. It's just really difficult. especially in the lower levels. So when you start looking at that, and then you start to look at 5th edition contemporary D&D, and you're like, okay, well, if I can't use my money to purchase magic items, what do I spend it on? And that seems to be the general consensus. That's where everybody kind of gets lost in the sauce when it comes to 5th edition and 5.5. It's like, what do you do when money loses all its value, which it tends to do very, very easily and very early in the game. In those first tier of adventure up through like 4th level, the rewards that you're given out are parceled out according to how D&D tells you to give out treasure. You can survive that. Like, you can make it through that, and you'll be able to still have the gold or money mean something in the game, because they're still like, oh, we can still buy healing potions. That's still kind of a cost that is a regular cost that we have. We'll still be buying mundane equipment. Fighter might be trying to buy plate armor or something like that, which is a high ticket item, but also things like spy glasses and that are like mundane equipment, but they are relatively expensive. I believe a spy glass is what, like 1,000 gold? Like, it's very expensive. It's either 100 or 1,000. I think it's 1,000 because I think it's notably expensive, as well as plate armor being equitably as expensive. Very difficult to get your hands onto. But then once you get into the higher levels, or you have that plate armor, you have that spy glass, whatever it is, you're like, what do I spend money on? Like, the cost of living aspect of D&D, which doesn't get used because we don't use downtime that much because there's not a lot of structure for how to use it very well. What do you spend that money on? Good question. So my answer to that is, I think a lot of people's answer, as they kind of come to the table working on this, is we should probably stop giving out so much gold. And so to that end, I figured, well, what are some questions that you might ask yourself as a dungeon master when you're looking to give out that treasure? First question I always try to be like is like, why are you giving out the loot? Is this meaningful in some way? Doesn't have to be, but is it meaningful? Like, why are you giving out loot? Especially in a game in which that loot, that money doesn't really add to anything. It's a reward that doesn't particularly mean much in the game at this point. So why are you giving it out? Wouldn't you rather give out a healing potion or some other sort of consumable item or piece of equipment that they might need, or rations or something, something they can actually use, or ammunition, especially like consumable magic items? That's a really easy one to give out. Be like, oh, this is going to be worth a lot more than just straight up gold, because here's the thing, is that they're going to get back to town or whatever, their dungeon or whatever adventure they're on. They're going to get back to town, they're going to look at their gold, and I think we have all experienced this as a dungeon master or game master. How many times are they simply then buying healing potions or buying spell scrolls or something of that nature? It's like, we can cut out the middleman, we can just give it to them. So it's about what type of loot are you providing. So I have essentially 3 types that I try to give out. One is opportunity loot. This is the sort of loot that you get when players like, oh, I want to search the dead body, or is there anything of value in this ruined room or something like that. Things that you're like, oh, they decide to search a random place, or this is random encounter and you're trying to see if there's anything on the bodies. This is what I call opportunity loot. Things that you're not really planning for, things that just kind of show up, and players are like, oh, I have an idea, we should see if there's anything of value on these people. So that's opportunity loot. That's number 1. Second one is minor treasure. So minor treasure is probably the one that I would say is most common that I use. It is most of the scripted loot that I put into any sort of adventure or dungeon delve. It's very much that. Mostly it's useful stuff that they'll find, or things that give them some sort of information or a piece of something. We'll get a little bit to that in a minute as we start to break them down, but that is the second one. So that's the most common one. It's just minor treasure. It's like, sometimes it's worth something, sometimes it's got some context for what's going on. It kind of gives you a little bit of storytelling or something like that. But primarily, this is where the actual like monetary aspect comes in. You're generally, at least in the way that I run it, not going to find a ton of money most of the time on dead body. We'll talk about it in a second. Pocket contents is what that is. And the third type of treasure that I use, the third type of loot that I use is planned treasure. Planned treasure is generally plot relevant treasure. It's often like our bigger magic items tend to be those things. Be like, oh, I've decided I want to put an important, notable. This is the sort of item that you drop into a campaign that has some sort of name or has something attached to it. Something that's more than just a +1 sword. But that's it. So that's question 1, which is why are you giving out loot? 2, what types of loot are you providing? I gave you my 3 types that we're talking about today. And then 3, what is the loot? And this is one of the things that I think makes a big difference in, once you kind of crack it, makes a big difference in how you run D&D or any other TTRPG. Because what is loot in your mind? For most of us, I think we think, oh, well, that's gold and treasure and magic items. That's about it, right? Things that are worth money that we can trade in for value to buy other things, or gold itself, or some sort of magic item or other type of item that helps us in our adventuring. Some sort of utility item. And I think if you're thinking about that in general, then you are leaving a lot on the table. You're not taking the full... You're not making the fullest use of loot or rewards that you could. So in my Game Master Oracle Questomatic, which I sometimes use to come up with small quests or come up with adventures, one of the many different ways that I use to create an adventure, or an idea for adventure, really. The premise of an adventure would be the best way to say that. And it has 20 different types of rewards that you can get out of it. And of course there are items there, but there are also like favors, consumables, your general supplies. A patron provides you some sort of service in lieu of payment. A letter of introduction to a new place or a new circle or group of people that you wouldn't otherwise be able to access. Access to a location itself. Some sort of license to do something you couldn't do before, like guild licensure or something like that. Provides you some sort of boon, particularly a temporary boon or enhancement that is generally custom. Usually it's how I make it, but I mean there are, depending on what game you're playing, often those games have pre-built boons or give you a framework for how to build boons to give to your players and their characters. So read up on it. I don't know. I think the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide has one in there. I know the 4th edition one, DMG2, I think specifically has it. I don't even remember. I think 2014 has it. I can't remember if 2024 Dungeon or not. If not, you can find that information from a number of different systems and try to backwards engineer how to use it in your D&D game or whatever system you're running, if it doesn't already have that. In addition to license, you could also get something like a minor title, something like that. Or one of the fun ones that you can do is like, oh, this was more of a test quest. Patron sends you out on something like a test quest. They're like, oh, you have now accomplished the requisite, bring me back 9 wolf hides or whatever. So you've proven that you are capable. And now that you've proven that you're capable, I'm giving you the opportunity to take on the real actual quest that I have for you. That first one's kind of a throwaway. So the opportunity is sometimes more work for that person. It's definitely one of the ones that I used kind of right now in the game that I'm running, though they used it more as a payment to get something out of a character, out of an NPC. Like the NPC will do this very expensive thing for you, but because of that, they are essentially going to be like, you owe me some favors. And I'll call in those favors, which is great for me as a dungeon master, because I'm like, great, those are just built-in adventure hooks that you have to take. And if you don't take them, then bad things happen. Because the person you're saying no to is a very powerful person in the world. Both in their own right, as in they are a higher level NPC, higher CR NPC, as well as they are just politically, organizationally within the world, they are also very powerful. They can bring a lot to bear against you if you please them. Yeah, so I think, are there any other issues I have for gold? You'll notice that none of those answers were gold, by the way. Very rarely is it just like, and then I give them gold. And almost never are those answers, is that answer gold. So, because I find gold is often, or any sort of currency doesn't have, you have silver and copper and electrum and platinum and, depending on what edition you're playing, astral diamonds and other things that showcase a large differentiation of value in the game as far as currencies. And I have some additional issues with gold. So one of them is that it is really just kind of, it's boring. It's too easy to give out. It's too easy to use for the players. It's really bland and boring. It's a reward. Nobody gets excited to be like, oh, we got gold, yay. I mean, unless you give them a whole bunch of gold, then they'll usually be excited about that. But that's the volume, not really the thing itself. What other things? It's also weird from an anachronism version of the game. If you're playing in this sort of pseudo made up Western European medieval Renaissance fantasy, particularly more the medieval side, most people, even like wealthy nobility, don't have a lot of liquidity. They don't have a lot of just big stockpiles of coins. That's very much a fantasy interlude. There's not a lot of people who have like just actual treasuries that have stuff. They have just mountains of coins, and that's not much of a thing. So most of their wealth is tied up in things like the land that they own, or the grain they get, or whatever they get off of that land, whatever the product of that land is. The warriors that they have, or retainers, vassals, that sort of thing. The property that they own, whether that's cattle or huts or buildings or any of that stuff, is like they own a mill, things like that are also part of it. Any livestock, etc. The people who are on their lands that are like their villains, who are their like servants and stuff like that, those are all resources for them, and that is mostly where their wealth is. It's very little of it is actual currency that they can use to exchange for goods or to pay out for adventurers, because most of the taxes they get are in-kind taxes. It's mostly in grain or service or something else. They don't generally get a lot of income because they're getting most of their income from the peasantry, and the peasantry doesn't have any money. So why would the noble who gets all their money from the peasantry have any money? So it's really only when you start to see things like cities take off, where trade becomes such a big important part, where it's strangers trading, and so money becomes that medium for it, that starts to take off. And we have a very, how we see money today, where it's like, oh, this is the de facto way in which we discuss wealth and how we trade wealth back and forth. Hey, what's going on, Dylan? You got a question. You agree about the gold feeling useless. Have you tried the Bastion idea in 5.5? I've not tried the Bastion idea. It's not new, so it's certainly not new. But yeah, this is, I think that, I have read through it, so I understand the Bastion problem, the idea, and it's not, it's weird because it is it's taking something that's very, very old in D&D, like from the very beginning of D&D, but using it in a completely different way in contemporary D&D. So in old D&D, usually you would get to a point, you would get into like the middle levels of D&D where you have accrued enough wealth that you would stop adventuring, essentially. Because adventuring, especially in OSR style D&D, is really dangerous. The likelihood that you're going to die is really high. So as soon as it's sort of the best contemporary thing that I can pull it to in the real world is being a music artist. If you are a successful music artist, the first thing that you usually do is start becoming a music producer, which means that you exploit other music artists. So essentially that's how old school D&D would work, is that you would adventure long enough until you got enough money, physical wealth, that you could basically purchase land and become landed. and manage a business or something else, which is very much that Bastion idea. And that becomes the primary mode of play for the game. Instead, you sponsor adventurers, lower level adventurers, to go do the adventure. And sometimes you play those characters, sometimes you don't. And so it becomes like this almost like MLM style of adventuring party where you're like, oh, I made enough money, so now I can sponsor adventurers and I get a cut of whatever adventuring they do, and they come back and they pay it to me. And then once they get powerful enough and rise high enough in levels, they hire more adventurers under them to do the same thing. But in contemporary D&D, bastions very much are like, here is a place to sink your money. And bastions do provide you good stuff, like you can... it's very similar to how Starfinder and other space games kind of use their spaceships. Being like, oh, you use the ships, that gives you an ability to like craft materials, work on upgrades, do that kind of stuff, do your kind of side hustles and stuff like that. And I like that, but I don't think that that addresses the problem, which is the gold. It's like a band-aid on the problem. Is that the problem is that you still have too much gold in the game. And that also assumes that any of your players and their characters are interested and have the ability to do those sorts of craftings or things. Otherwise, they're just kind of making a clubhouse just to spend money. And that's cool and it's fun, but most of adventuring, most of D&D does not happen at your bastion. So it's like building a really cool base in a game and then being like, I never spend any time at that base. It's like, it's a cool thing that I don't do anything with. Neat. It's very much like paying for a skin or something like that in a video game. It's like, yeah, it's cool and I like looking at it, but it's actually not particularly important to the actual gameplay most of the time. Yeah. You're more focused on that bastion style side of things, like, oh, how do I run my estate well? How do I ensure that we have a good crop? How do I manage the tenants? How do I expand my territories? How do I make trade deals? All that kind of stuff. And you're like, I pay lower level adventurers to go do the actual adventuring stuff. And sometimes we play those adventures, and sometimes we don't. There's a similar thing that happens in the campaign that I'm playing in. Not the one that I'm running, but the one that I'm playing in, where the group has a... Oh, audio's back. All right, good. The thing that's happening in the campaign that I'm playing is kind of similar, is that we have a ship, and on that ship we have a number of NPC crew. And so sometimes we send the crew out to do things, or because we're busy doing something else and the crew goes and does their own thing. And sometimes we play the crew, sometimes we jump in and play. They have like little sidekick character sheets. And we'll pick, a group of the crew, and we'll go play their little adventure. And we get kind of a break from playing our own characters, which allows us to play something different and fun. Kind of cool. And sometimes it's like, nope, they just kind of go off and do their thing, and we don't actually RP that. So it depends on, like, if we're taking downtime in character, that might be one of the times that we play, like, what is essentially a one-shot with the sidekick characters, and then come back. Or it's like one time that it happened in our campaign where all the PCs got a TKO. We all got knocked out as part of, I guess you would call it a hazard. We got KO'd by like a thunder wave or something from a storm giant, like a super high level. And we just got KO'd. And so it was up to the NPCs. They had to come rescue our PCs. They're just significantly lower level, so it was very fun. Very different style of play. But yeah, it's a fun way to do that. So, issues with gold. Boring and bland. It's pretty much worthless once you get out of the low levels. It's too easy to come by and too easy to use. It really doesn't fit most D&D style settings in general as far as how they would operate. And it's never really an impediment. think about it, are you using any sort of encumbrance system in your game? Most of us aren't. So, and even those that do, usually I have found the party usually gets thrown a bag of holding very, very quickly at any campaign in which I played, where encumbrance is even kind of looked at most of the time. So just to kind of be like, you can carry stuff, don't worry about it, as just kind of a hand wave of having to deal with encumbrance. And we treat gold most of the time like video games treat any sort of currency, which is that it has no weight whatsoever, and you can carry as much as you can, which is weird because there is actually weight in the books. The books tell us how much gold weighs. Actually, any coinage, because they make the coinage all weigh the same, which is every 50 coins, 50, of any type, regardless if that's electrum or copper or gold or platinum, whatever it is, 50 coins weighs a pound. So, what, like 0.4 kilograms or something like that. So that's 20 pounds for every 1,000 coins that you have. And those of us who run sort of reach that middle level of D&D, and the party's running around with thousands and thousands of coins of different denominations, whether that's copper all the way up to platinum, you'd be like, you can be carrying around hundreds of pounds of coins. And be like, how are you doing that? How are you even storing it? Like, what do you hold that in? That's so much stuff, and it weighs so much. What are you doing? How are you make that make sense to me? It's the exact reason, like, that encumbrance issue is a big part of old school D&D and the resource management style gameplay, is that the idea of the encumbrance of coinage is why in old school adventures you'll often have chests that have like thousands of copper coins in them. You might run up to a copper coin and be like, yeah, this has got 5,000 copper coins in it. This chest is full of 5,000 copper coins. Like, you can take that with you while you're adventuring, but you've got to carry a chest, which is already heavy, and you've got to carry 5,000 copper coins, which is 100 pounds, in addition to the chest that it's in. And remember that those copper coins are worth about 50 gold. So it's a lot of weight. It's a pain in the butt to transport, because you're going to have to use your hands while you're doing it, so you can't be ready for a fight. And it's also not worth very much. So treasure in old school D&D is always this jockeying of inventory, like how much is this worth us picking up and carrying with us? And if so, only until we find something that weighs about as much and is worth a lot more. And then we'll drop this and start carrying that instead. So it's got this inventory management aspect that we see in like contemporary video games, where you're playing, let's say, a Bethesda game, and you're constantly over encumbered, and you're like, all right, what do I drop? What's not? Do I drop some scrap? Do I drop, how much is this worth? Do I drop that? Okay, I'm only picking up items that are worth this amount or more to make it worth my while. So that sort of aspect was very common in old school D&D that we don't use anymore. So it becomes this issue about, like, when we find treasure, it's like, is this valuable enough for us to pick up and carry out of the dungeon or back to town, whatever adventure we're doing? Or is the thing useful enough that we want to carry it with us as gear? So when you find something like a healing potion, that's a no-brainer. Number one, it's worth 50 gold, so it's already got a pretty decent sellback price. It's also incredibly utility. It's an incredibly useful item as far as adventuring goes, because it gets you hit points back, and you don't have to use a spell slot for it or rest to do it. So it's really nice. And the last aspect about gold and the issue with it is, let's say that you decide to take this chest full of coins back to town. You guys are laden down with treasure. Why is nobody trying to steal that treasure from you? Now, granted, you might be murder hobos and you might already have a very much a infamous kind of notoriety to you. Be like, oh no, these are crazy people who who kill monsters for a living. So I don't want to get caught by them. But people steal stuff all the time. So they look for any opportunity that you're not around or you're asleep, and they're going to try to take that stuff. Also, why are vendors not trying to rip you off? Like, you see somebody walk into a store, like a mom and pop shop, and somebody who spends a lot of money or something is clearly well-to-do. It's like, suddenly, the prices tend to get a little bit higher. There's no reason that that also wouldn't happen. And yet, that's not usually something we do. Usually it's like, well, the problem when you put the prices in the book is that people always expect those prices to be the prices, regardless of what's going on, even though that's not at all how the economy works. That's not how economics works. Very much supply and demand. It's very, very different. So, the answer that I found that I think a lot of people stumbled on, but hey, this is my channel, so we're going to do it my way, is that make money really hard to come by. Money's really useful because you can carry quite a bit of it for, a relatively low cost. Or for a low weight, you can carry quite a bit of it. And it's endlessly useful no matter where you go in the world, because we don't have to worry about D&D different mintings of coins between kingdoms and things like that, and doing like money exchanging, which all that stuff was very, very common in early D&D. But we don't use that anymore, and I understand why. I think that that's not necessarily fun for a lot of people. And try to remember that the D&D 5 and 5.5, making the general like NPC in the world is not making a lot of money. So if a PC is making, let's say, through their adventuring, an average of like 5 gold a day, they have a vastly higher income than the majority of people that live in the world. So at some point, it makes sense. It's like, once you have enough money, once you have like thousands of gold, why would I continue adventuring? That's the thing that very old school D&D went, yeah, actually that doesn't make a lot of sense. You would try to figure out some way, you would try to use the wealth that you've accrued and have that wealth make you more money in a way that probably won't get you killed. So it's, in a lot of ways, adventuring's like piracy, in that it's incredibly dangerous, but it can also be incredibly lucrative, and allows people to go beyond what might be the established class or caste system of how society operates. Is it allows you to kind of break that mold. Allows you to rub elbows with people you normally wouldn't be able to, as your background is probably like a common person rather than high nobility. Gives you the ability to kind of get in those rooms and talk to those people. And pretty much in my world is to what they try to do is downplay how much currency is in the world to begin with. Those nobles don't have a lot of money. Traders who show up, unless you're going to like a big fair or something like that, they don't have a ton of money to exchange. Unless you're in like a larger city or a port town where international trade is really, really common, the coinage is more important, so that there is more of it than say you're out in the rural frontier countryside somewhere where there's not a lot of trade that's going on. So people pay you with stuff that's not gold or currency in any kind of way. So I think that pretty much talks about my issues with gold and how I kind of come to the answer the way that I use these 3 different types of loot and downplay how I use gold as far as rewards. And so I think it's about time we start probably talking about the actual loot systems. Let's check chat real quick. It's really cool in itself, creates space where players won't get fatigued from being the same character. Yes, it's incredibly helpful. My friend who's running the campaign has been running it, I guess we've been running it, we're rolling up on like 2 years now, about 2 years. I think that's about right. Definitely over a year. Yeah, I think we're getting close to 2 years. So yeah, having the ability to be like, oh, we'll play, and I have another friend in the group who's also run some other stuff. To kind of take a break, give the DM break, give us all a break. But yeah, having the ability to jump into a different character and run like that, or run a one shot that's like somewhere else in the world if you want to keep the theme consistent, like the campaign consistent, or you want to know what happened while you guys were off doing something, and you can play out that stuff. We played like skirmish war games to figure out how a war's going on that we're not in control of while we're also off doing something else. It's really fun. He does a very good job of shifting that stuff away, so campaigns generally stay pretty fresh. Also, the types of adventures we do differ quite a bit. You move the like slot based for the inventory. Yeah, like that. I really like the Starfinder, and I think they use it in Pathfinder 2 now, if I remember correctly. It's been a minute since I did it. Inventory, where it's like item, where it's like that 10 based system, where it's like, oh, anything that doesn't weigh anything, once you have 10 of those items, it becomes 1 unit of weight. Once you have 10 units of weight, it's like 1 larger. And that depends like how much stuff you can hold in the backpack, and it's dependent on your strength score and stuff like that. Very, very cool. I do like those systems. I feel like it's something that I would definitely be interested in utilizing for something like D&D. Like, I'm trying to think if I could get players on board with it, because it's really hard to make people who are not interested in that style play, where resources are limited, where encumbrance is important, who don't generally play that game. It's hard to get them, I think, to the point where they start to see the fun in that you have to it's like spicy food. It's like you have to eat spicy food enough to where the spicy part of it becomes enjoyable. Becomes an enjoyable part of the experience, and not a thing that you try to avoid at all costs. Hey Coder, how are you doing? Am I making a low magic world for? Yeah, almost always am I playing a relatively low magic world. There are parts of it that can be more high magic, but I definitely don't run anything like a Dragonlance or an Eberron, just because I don't typically find those super interesting. I think like if I was going to play something like Eberron, I'd rather play just a steampunk or focus system, or a sci-fi, because that's generally just taking fantasy and trying to make it sci-fi. I'd rather just play a science fiction or science fantasy game instead. You like to employ beasts like dragons to keep a balance in the world of gold. So if you get too greedy, a dragon or other things that are attracted to your settlement, yes. That is generally, in the campaign world that I'm running right now, that is how magic works. Magic, in general, is almost like a siren song for monsters. So the more magic that you consolidate in one area, so that means kind of the more powerful you get as species, the more monsters are likely to seek you out, and more powerful monsters will seek you out, because they are drawn to it like moths to a flame. Like they want it real bad. They want that magic. But magic also works in my world, where it's got this sort of radiation quality, where it's actually radiation-like quality, I should say, in that for most people, being around a lot of high-level magic is really bad for them. They get really sick. They get like radiation poisoning. Things that make adventurers different is that adventurers seem to be highly resistant, if not immune to that. So they can go into areas where with this chaos, radiation essentially, where other people cannot. So they can go in there and pull out lots of cool magic stuff that other people can't. All right, let's hop over. Let's talk first about the opportunity loot. So I've thrown this. It's definitely in this guy. I've referenced it plenty of times, both in doing prep as well as talking about things, as well as the solo RPG. But I figured it'd be a good idea to actually show it off, because I don't show it off very often. So let me, and I'll be honest that I don't even know how this is going to be set up. So let me see if I can find document. I kind of want to show you the other document, which I think is under, it might be under the solo dungeon creation stuff, right? Because it's technically, I usually showcase it in the way that it's written in here. It's written as a table, but it's truly a D66 table. So we might as well give out D66. Let's see, I believe it's in the yeah, I believe it's in this document where I have it written out basically as a, actually I think this might also have, just have the patron rewards in it. It does not. Okay, that's all right. Down here we go. Here's the pocket contents. Let me blow this up and then I'll shoot you guys over. All right, there. All right, let's see if I can up. No, of course it wouldn't. Yeah, there we go. So it's the highlighted part. This is our D66 pocket contents. So basically, I usually have it as a table instead of this, like literally set up as a table. Hey, what's going on? I see you. So this is what I would call opportunity loot. This is, I really made this entire table, and I really love this table because it's just like, I kept getting questions so many times as Dungeon Master, Game Master, being like, they run across a dead body, players run across a dead body, or the characters do, they're like, I check their pockets, or see if they have anything on them, or is there anything in this desk, or, you know, players just rooting around for loot of any type, especially when you start taking gold out of the game, they start looting a lot more. So each one is kind of a category, but that's not important. It's not well represented here, but that's fine. So if you roll, by the way, if you roll a D66 table, it's rolling 2d6, the same way that you would roll like a D100 with 2 D10s. You do the same thing, but with D6s. And that's a D66. So it's not actually 66 results, it's actually 36 results. That's important, but it is kind of a misnomer. It's not the greatest titling ever. So if you roll 2 1s, you get clothing. They find some sort of clothing article. And that might be everything from like a full set of explorers clothing, or travelers clothing, to fine clothing, or just common clothing. Or it might be a very particular thing. These are things that I keep very, very vague, because it's sometimes an opportunity for me to use it to improv something, or to give my players a clue about something else that's going on. Comes up and be like, oh, you find a singular mitten that has maybe bloodstains on it. Huh, where's the other mitten? Who's this person? Can we check the size? Can that tell us? If I know that there's an NPC or a dead body somewhere else in this adventure or this dungeon, I can give you the idea about, like, okay, somebody about this size, you know they're medium size. Looks like, based off of the color and design and size, that it's probably feminine. And think, if you had to guess, maybe an elf? Not sure. Kind of give them this idea and prep them from other things so they can get a little bit of information. Be like, okay, we need to be on the look for potentially like a female elf, or the body of an elf, or something. It's also like, if it was summertime, be like, why is there a mitten here? So this has been here a long time, so maybe this person's not alive anymore. Kind of give them that sort of thing. 12, they roll a 1 and 2. It's some sort of personal charm or fetish they have on them, as in like the Thor hammer that somebody might be wearing, like a religious symbol, or some sort of good luck charm. This is sort of things that would be like, in the real world, would be like, you find a keychain for somebody's keys. And that might have information on it. It might not. It might tell you something about what's going on. It might not. It might just be a silly thing. It might be worth money. It might not really be worth any money. You find a random gemstone. So you can expect that has maybe fallen out of something, or somebody had it in their pocket. Because gemstones are worth a lot more and they're easier to carry around than cash is. So 50 gold weighs a pound. You know that. We talked about that earlier. But 50 gold is also like a sack. A 50 gold gemstone's like that. You can just put that in your pocket. It's about the size of a coin. And you can just throw it in your pocket. So very easy to carry around. Same thing with jewelry, which is the next one. You might find a full set. You might find one earring. Something like that. You kind of mix it up and mix those things up. 15 is a lens, which is usually like a lens for reading. So it's basically a, like, kind of looks like a, they're like a desk magnifier. If you don't know what that is, kind of hard to. Let's see if I can. No, that's not it. Yeah, it's kind of like this guy. Okay. So it's basically like a little flat thing that generally sits on a desk or something like that, and you use it to make text larger, essentially. So it's relatively inexpensive compared to like a magnifying glass, but it serves basically the same purpose. But it does kind of need to rest on something flat, whereas a magnifying glass you can hold. So not quite as utility, but it's also something that somebody would have if they didn't have very good eyesight. So maybe that ties into something that's going on, or maybe it tells you something about this person. And it gives you those things. It's just a fun little things. 16 is some sort of weapon or shield that they have on them. Most of the time it's going to be like a dagger, which is like the personal defense weapon, or a cudgel stick or something like that. A walking stick, could be a lot of those things. Occasionally it's going to be like a sword or something like that, or a nice piece of armor or something like that, but most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's not. You love to give your players a magic weapon with a symbol of a noble household. Yeah, that's a fun one. Yeah. Try to, and we'll talk about that in a little bit once we get to the opportunity loot. Opportunity loot tends to be incredibly generic or very specific to whatever the context you find it in. So if you were to use that example, if you were, say, in the ruins of a noble house or a haunted house and that's what you were going through, yeah, the sword that you find in there would probably have the crest of the noble house. Very much that. But might just be a plain old regular sword otherwise. It might not even be a magic weapon. In fact, it probably would. 21 is some sort of game or tool, so that you can find, they can find tool sets. They can find, Diamonds Morris set, or chess, or a deck of cards, or some dice, or maybe just a die. And they're like, most dice usually come in a set, so if you only have one, either it goes to some sort of board game that you don't have the rest of the boards to, or maybe it's just a singular chess piece, and maybe that means something. So maybe you have the rook piece. You're like, I wonder if that's some sort of code, or like to show who you are, some sort of passcode, something like that. You can do all sorts of fun stuff with that. And then we start getting into, like, these are more utility items. Handkerchief. Feel like you can get yourself a snotty handkerchief. Maybe something like that. Pick it out and it's sticky, and you go, I don't like that. I'm gonna leave that behind. You can make it cloth, you can make it silk, so it can be worth quite a bit of money and not be worth money. Kind of depends. You might have embroidery telling you who it is. Maybe the initials. That's a very common fiction trope. It'd be like, oh, it's got initials on it, or it has a design of a household crest, like we were just talking about, or a specific flower. Maybe that flower is a name of the person who had it. Maybe they're named something like marigold or petunia, etc. Maybe that's whose this is, or maybe it has nothing to do with that. Maybe it's just their favorite flower. Things like that. Knife, like the dagger. Knives are different. Knives are tools, daggers are weapons. The distinction I like to make. Number one, they're forged very differently because they're for very different uses. So a knife is more of a utility item. Now there are no knives in D&D. You might not. You might know that. But there is no knife. But it is a utility blade, so it might have some wear on it, or again, it might have specific type of metal or something that kind of sends it off. Probably is. They're utility items, so they're generally not worth a lot of money, but could give you insights based off of the wear and tear, what they were used for, or maybe who dropped them, like the size of the person or something like that. Number 25 is some sort of light source. So torches, lamps, lanterns, flask of oil, matches, flint and steel, tinderbox, any of those kind of things kind of fall under light source that you find on somebody. 26 is a wax tablet. I've talked about it before. It's one of my favorite pieces of adventuring gear that's not in D&D that I try to take very often, or try to get the okay from. If I'm playing a specific type of character, get like a diptych. What? You can't say that online. Yeah. Looking for one. So, a diptych is a very particular thing. In fact, the thumbnail for this video is a triptych because there's 3 of them of a diptych. But what I was looking for was a wax specific type. Well, it's not going to be. It's going to bring me everything except the thing that I'm looking for, which is not art. It's essentially a reusable notepad. Oh, wax. I spell it correctly. There we go. Those are the things we're talking about. So I've talked about these before. They're really cool. They're basically reusable notebooks. I think it's weird that we don't have stuff like that in D&D because it's incredibly useful adventuring gear to have something that you can write down notes on and then smudge it out and rewrite it. So it's a one-time use thing instead of trying to make a bunch of like charcoal marks or chalk marks or use a whole bunch of parchment and ink, which is incredibly more expensive and would be better used for like making scrolls and doing stuff like that. 31, we get into like food, basically. Things that people might have on them. They have some sort of candy, so it might be like little honey drops, stuff like that. Carb, they might have like a penny roll or a crust of bread or something like that in their pocket. Maybe a small bag full of rice, etc. Maybe some like little onigiri kind of things going on. A rind of cheese, etc. They have fruit, might be dried fruit, might be fresh fruit. Maybe they have an apple in their pocket. Maybe that apple's rotten, and maybe that's an indication you can use. Be like, oh, this body has been here. You can kind of judge the amount of time it's been there. If you're like, oh, there's still like a soft, squishy, rotting apple in their pocket of this corpse. Like, okay, so I know that they didn't just die. I know they didn't die today. But they also didn't die like a month ago. So we're like in the days or weeks territory. You need to like use each little clue to like winnow down the information until they get to understanding what's happening. And then jerky, dried meat, pemmican, all that kind of stuff. And nuts and seeds. Other items, 41, a flask. Could be a flask of oil. Could be a flask of holy water. Generally, it's a flask of alcohol. Not always, but could be. Generally, that's how I play that. Is usually it's a clay flask. Occasionally, it'll be like a silver flask that's worth a little bit of money. Might be engraved. Might tell you whose it is. Might have maybe this thing that's actually inside the flask is worth more than the flask itself. Maybe it's like a high-grade alcohol that you can use for something, or it's just just good whiskey or whatever it is. 42 is one of my favorites. A key. What does the key go to? If I know something in the adventure needs a key, then maybe that's what that is. Otherwise, you find a key. The key might be a silver key, so it might be worth money by itself, or maybe they have to figure out what the keys to. That's one of those things where it's like, I'm going to drop a little crumb in front of my players. Here's a key. Do you guys spend any time trying to figure out what this key goes to? If you have one PC that really like takes the hook and like, right in their mouth, and they're like, I'm looking around every time that we come across a door or a chest. Does this key fit this? Does this key fit this? I know to be like, okay, I need to make the key important in some way. Otherwise, the key, if they forget about it or whatever, the key's just a key. And maybe they leave it there. Maybe they're like, yeah, this isn't worthwhile, so we're not taking it with us. After that, incense. Yeah, something to smell goods. Perfume's also on this list. As well as medicine, which comes up often, is like medicinal herbs or things like that. So I use these as a way to restock healers kits when PCs are playing, or to use as crafting materials if they want to make potions and stuff like that. You can come across medicines, stuffs, essentially medicine stuffs, and be like, oh, we're gonna grab this, and then I'll add it to my crafting materials, so that way I can use this extra little bit to brew a potion of healing later, or anti-venom or whatever brew. Or use it to, like I said, give more charges back to a healer kit or something like that. Narcotics, same way. You find alcohol, you find tobacco, you find a number of other substances you could find. Opium, poppies, heroin, all over the place. It's like sometimes, people got stuff on them. They've got that feel good. Hey, what's going on, Vera? I see you. And then last we have the perfume, which is the smell good. And that's really nice because in D&D we definitely have a value for perfume. Perfume's kind of expensive. And then everything in the 50s is literally just the one way you get just hard currency. You can get a D10 of copper, a D10 of silver, 2 D10 of silver, a D10 of gold, or 2 D10 of gold. At the very end, you get a D10 of platinum. So this is kind of for whoever's working around. Now, I use discretion when I use this. So if they come across the body of a peasant and I roll 56, I'm like, well, obviously this guy doesn't have 8 platinum pieces on it. This isn't a beggar that's got 80 gold on him, unless I have a very specific reason or I have a very good idea of what that might be. Like maybe he stole it and he got killed for it and they didn't find it, or something like that. But in general, I play pretty close to the breast as far as how I use this, depending on the circumstances found, which is par for the course for using something like this D66 pocket content. Like, look for things that make sense. Or something interesting. If you can find something interesting and come up with a reason why to use it, more power to you. It can always be a jumping off point for some sort of side quest or some sort of to improvise some sort of scene or to add something to the adventure that you already have going on. 61 is one of my favorite ones. It is a banknote. If you're not familiar with what a banknote is, it's kind of like the precursor of a check. And essentially you go to, and it's a great way to, this is how trading was done, so you didn't have to carry around. We talked about the chest with like 5,000 silver in it, or 5,000 copper in it, and be like, that's a pain in the butt to lug around. People recognized that. So you had mints, essentially, which were places that people could store their money. Specifically, like merchants and traders could store their money, and they would basically be like, hey, you've got 1,000 of my gold. Can you, in return, give me basically a receipt in 100 gold piece denominations? So I want 10 100 gold banknotes. And so I can pay people with these, and all they have to do is take this piece of paper, bring it back to the bank, give it to the bank, and then the bank will give them 100 gold from that person's account, essentially, their little vault. It's very close to how the bank works in something like Baldur's Gate 3 you go into. That bank vault where it's just like, yeah, everybody's got basically their own boxes, storage boxes that you can like pull stuff out from. Very similar. 62 is you find some sort of contract. Somebody's made a contract about something. It might be like a deed to a property, something like that. It might be like a trade contract. This is a really great way to like provide information. Everything here in this last push is pretty much information. It's a good way to like give information about what's going on. So it's like if this person hired hobgoblin mercenaries, if you come kill one of the hobgoblins, you might come across their contract, and their contract tells you exactly who hired them, how much they're getting paid, and what they're supposed to be doing. So you get lots of specifics about what's going on. You might get directions to a place, which is very close to a map or itinerary. But directions, actually, I'll take that back. Map and itinerary are like driving directions. Like, you turn left here, you follow this road. Once you get to this town, you take the road that's headed out to this location. Because itineraries are a lot more common historically than maps are. Maps are incredibly rare. Number one, they're very rare. And number two, they're incredibly inaccurate. So what you really want is directions to a place, and that's what an itinerary is. Whereas directions in this context, so that was my mistake. Directions in this context is how to do a thing. It's like, I need you to do this, this, or this. This is also a way that I hand in notes that be like, the common thing that I will do in dungeons, if I'm going to put some sort of puzzle in the dungeon, or I'm going to put something that's got like a passcode or is coded. Anyways, there's some sort of like way that you need to bypass something by doing something correctly, essentially. Rather than, put key in slot or pick door or whatever. The way that I do that is that somebody in your dungeon is real dumb. And that dumb person needs to write down how to get through the thing. This makes it very easy, so that way whenever I'm creating a dungeon or an adventure in which there's a puzzle, that puzzle is never unsolvable, and I don't have to, when I'm running the puzzle, give my players the answer after a while. If they keep banging their heads against the wall and 15 or 20 minutes go by, like, all right, you guys haven't figured this out, you need to maybe look for another way through. As they go through the dungeon, they will come across the body that is going to have these directions on them. Now, sometimes players forget to do things like search the bodies, and I have to remind them and be like, oh, I assume you're searching the bodies. While you search the bodies, you find these directions. So sometimes you have to lead them by the nose a little bit, but it is a lot more fulfilling to be like, oh, we found the way to the problem by diegetically, by doing things in game, rather than the DM getting tired and being like, oh, I have to keep giving you so many clues to figure out this puzzle to the point where I'm basically just doing what I thought was a very simple puzzle by myself, and I'm just telling you the answer. Which one of the reasons why I don't like puzzles as Dungeon Master or Game Master, but other people do. So every once in a while, I'll add something like that in. But when I do that, I want to make sure that there is some other way, without me just basically hand-waving the puzzle, they can figure out a way to get through it. Which is usually by finding a body, or coming across a desk somewhere, or a chest, or this little piece of loot is somewhere in the dungeon or adventure that they can find, and that will give them the, I know what this is. This is clearly the passcode for the door with the magic mouth. You can run back there and be like, Excelsior, and then the big friend and enter kind of situation. 64, list or note. Could be a shopping list. It could be a list of items and things, tasks they need to do, anything like that. Any sort of note. You can always have the Orc Rager has a loving note that's in their lunchbox from, their spouse back home. From their partner back home, that has a big like handwritten heart on it. It's like, love you, hope to see you soon. And then you feel bad about, I killed that guy. Anyways, does he have anything else on him? We move on from there. We talked about map and itinerary. Pass and papers, very much the same. They have some sort of pass, something very similar to a contract, or like how do they get through point A or point B. They have some sort of license or a passport or travel papers or something that you have and use. Some sort of security clearance or something like that. And while all these examples that I'm using, I am using like tactile paper, they don't have to be that. They could be like a badge of some type. Anything like that. So those are pocket copies. That's my opportunity. This is the stuff that I'm going through. So there's really, anytime that I roll for pocket contents, there's only a 1 in 6 chance that they're going to actually get any hard currency out of it, that they're going to get any actual coinage. Most of this stuff is going to end up being like maybe useful stuff, maybe it's just junk, maybe it's something like that. There are sometimes potentially it can end up being worth more. Like I said, there's that 1d10 platinum piece. You can end up finding just a dead body that's got roughly 100 gold on it, which is nice, especially if there's multiple dead bodies. But I do try to curb the expectations with that and be like, it doesn't really make sense for these guys to have this much money. And then conversely to be like, sometimes it doesn't make sense that this guy only has 3 copper on him. I feel like he would at least have 30 copper on him. Kind of like upcasting it to silver. Another way that I will also do this is that say that I rolled, I think I skipped over instrument. Not bad. They find a music instrument most of the time. That's generally what that is. Some sort of flute or something like that. Hidden whistle spoons that they play. Usually it's a very, very cheap, very simple ocarina, very, very crude kind of instrument that they carry around with them to make music. I was gonna say noise. To make noise, also known as music. Noise and rhythm, I would say. That's music. One of the things that I will do with this is be like, okay, if I need to know how much is this thing worth, I will just roll the d6 for the money value and use this accordingly. So let's say that I rolled an instrument and I was like, how much is this worth? I roll 3. Okay, it's 2d10 silver, so it's roughly 11 silver. So that might be enough to get you like a super cheap string instrument, but if anybody's looked at the musical instruments values in D&D, they tend to be very expensive. So it's probably something relatively cheap, but not super cheap. So it's like, it's a flute, and it's well made, but it is, or it's made of good stuff, good quality materials, but it is incredibly simple. It's like a penny whistle, but it's made of nice wood, and it's in good condition. So, do you want to take it with you? Yes or no? Can you play it? No, can't play it. You know it's probably not worth a lot of money. You might decide to leave it here. You might decide to bring it with you and see if somebody else recognizes it. And that could give you more information about. Now in all these contexts, I'm saying that for the most part, you're going to find these undead bodies because this is pocket contents. That's generally what I use it for. But it could be in like a desk drawer or an abandoned campsite or anything like that. Sort of thing that like if you rolled into an abandoned barracks or even a barracks that's in use, maybe there aren't any people in it, and be like, these are the sort of things you might find that like rolled off a table and it's like under a bench somewhere. Same sort of things. So that's everything about opportunity loot, which is the most common loot that I come up with. Well, that's not true. Mine treasure, what we're about to do, is the most common thing that I get out. And again, this is something that I have showed on stream before, but I think this will be good for you guys to see because I don't often show it because it's kind of a pain in the butt to pull up. And again, I have all these resources like literally right here, so it's very easy for me to reference. This is my Dungeon Master binder. DM1, not DMI. So this is I have 3 essentially different Dungeon Master binders. I talked about this a little bit before. This one, DM1, is the one that I take. This is the at the table resource. So it's got like rules references and charts and random NPCs and stuff to help me like improv at the table. Dungeon Master Binder 2, which is over here. Well, I moved it because I've been working on stuff for an adventure. So I moved it. But Dungeon Master 2 has adventure creation stuff in there. So it's about making like dungeons and setting up and planning adventures and that sort of aspect. So it's the stuff that I'm running like session prep, then adventure prep, and then Dungeon Master 3 is sort of campaign prep or world setting information. So those are all, I know which one to grab based off of what I'm trying to do as a Dungeon Master or Game Master. If I'm prepping for a session, I just need to know what's going on in the session. I'm grabbing this one, and this is the one that I'm taking to the games. My resource to run out of. If I'm ready to plan a new adventure or build a dungeon or something like that, I go grab DM2. If I need to add something to the world lore or change something about the setting or look something up about the setting, oh, that's in Dungeon Master 3. And so that's where I keep like all the campaign stuff. So session stuff will, like completed adventures will end up back into, we'll move from basically Dungeon Master's Guide Binder 2, not guide, Binder 2 to 1, and then I'll end up throwing it back into DM3, Dungeon Master's Binder 3. That way, when I need to look back on the adventure up to this point, I have all those resources. I put like all the session prep and stuff in there as well. So all my session prep sheets and the notes that I take, and they all in there, so I can always have one spot that I can go and look at all that stuff. So, the next one we're going to pull up is Minor Treasure, though. So, I'm going to throw you back to my smiling face. How are you? Hopefully you guys are doing well. I'm doing alright. I'm a little warm. I took a shower before this, and I run hot, so I'm still warm. Even though we've been doing this for over an hour now. I'm sure having a nice warm drink is not helping the situation. But it is keeping me perky. Alright. This is minor treasure. Correct one. Yes, this is the correct one. So this is the document that's actually in my Dungeon Master's 1 binder, which includes in it the 2d6 pocket contents table version of it. We'll see very quickly. But I think before we jump in and do that, let me go ahead. I'll throw it over there. Minor treasure. We click. That's what we're going to be looking at. I'm going to go take a break. I'm going to go refill my coffee. We'll come back and we'll knock out these last two. And we'll talk a little bit about our minor treasure and stuff. You guys hang on and I'll be back in just a moment. If you guys have any questions you want me to address, drop those into the chat now so that way when I get back, we'll hit those questions first. Yes, it is definitely about to say about coffee and tea. Yeah, it is definitely about that time. Yeah. Delicious. This is the not Greek coffee. But this time, I didn't burn my hand making it, which is lovely. But yeah, we're going to talk a lot about trade goods. That's what most of the minor treasure is, for sure. So we're going to see a lot of that. So what is minor treasure in this context? So I have a 1d20 kind of minor treasure table that I've created that I use. Within it, there's about a 20% chance that you will find currency in it most of the time. This is most the filler treasure. This is the cruft of a dungeon or other adventure. This is the stuff that you're gonna find most of the time that I end up when I dropping things into an adventure. They tend to be very useful, like the like the here. Move this pop-up. Sorry. Back on track. Like I was talking about with finding the medicine and stuff like that, there is medicine in this as well that's often used for resupplying limited resources. You're finding ammunition, rations, and healing potions, and medicine, and crafting materials, and things like that, as well as other utility items. You get the spell scrolls, mundane adventuring gear that you might need, so more rope, crowbars, stuff like that. And that's most of that stuff that ends up coming out. I do like to customize a lot of these items when I can, and let the PCs do something mechanically that they couldn't before. But that's me kind of overreaching. That is me kind of making this transition between what is minor treasure and our planned treasure, or truly planned or purposeful treasure that we have at the end. When given the opportunity, I like to make it a little bit more custom whenever possible. But hey, I also throw a lot of just stuff that's just straight from the books right into it. Either way is good. If you got the time, I like to use them. If you don't worry about it. Like one of the ones that I've given to the current party of the current campaign that I'm running twice now. I think we didn't do it twice. The thing that is a custom item that we call Shiari powder. It's a consumable that essentially gives the group, they brew it like a pot of coffee and drink it, and it gives the group essentially the alert feat from 2014. Go ahead and pull up the alert feat. There we go. Here. So, the alert feat from the player's handbook. You're always on the lookout for danger and you gain the following benefits. You can't be surprised while you're conscious. You get a +5 bonus to initiative. And other creatures don't gain advantage on attack rolls against you as a result of being unseen by you. So it's really useful for fighting invisible attackers. It's really good for getting a drop on people in combat. It's really good when you're traveling to ensure that you're not surprised by an ambush and things like that. It's really, really good. But it's a consumable product. You brew it once, you get it until basically you guys take a long rest, and then it's gone. Which is something that I learned long ago. It's hard for me to identify where I learned it from. It might have been from Mike Shea over at Sly Flourish. Maybe not. It's happened so long ago. I've used it for so long that I'm not sure about the source of the inspiration. No, I know it was not my original idea. I know somebody else and talked about it first, and I saw it and was like, that's actually an incredibly good idea. Which is that when you're giving out treasure, give out really powerful stuff. Just make it consumable. Give them the ability to do stuff they normally can't do. Like the ability to, for a temporary amount of time, have the alert feat. Let them try out feats or give them stuff that they otherwise wouldn't get access to. But you can control the power of that by making it a very temporary consumable item. So give them really powerful stuff where they save it for the right situation and they have the perfect thing for the right situation. But once they use it, gone. So I like that. I like that line of thought when it comes to giving out treasure and to, like, I don't have to worry about my my players and their characters getting too powerful, because I'm like, I'm gonna give you lots of powerful stuff, but they're all mostly one and dones, or they allow you to do something, or cover up a weakness that your party has, or allows you to do something that you already do well, do it just a little bit better. And I use that as sort of the way that I go about it. But most of the stuff that comes with minor treasure tends to be cumbersome and heavy stuff. So we talked about the big chest of coins. That's kind of thought about it. I like that limited resource management aspect of old school D&D. So when I'm running, I introduce elements of that. Now, I'm not making them care about their full inventory and stuff like that, but sometimes I give them big stuff, like stuff that won't fit in your backpack. So how do you transport that? Do you leave that here? It might be worth a lot of money, but what are you going to do with it? This is also when I'm doing things like that. They need to be things that are carried out of a dungeon or adventure back to town, and then they need to be converted to coinage. So there's another sort of mid-step there. And I like that mid-step for a couple of reasons. One, it gives them an idea about like what is worthwhile to carry. So instead of making loot just always a thing that you pick up and run away with, it'd be like, is this worth us taking the time to take it with us? Or coming back for it. It's also an option. It reminds me of a campaign that I was playing in a long time ago. Short-lived campaign, especially with this group that I was playing with. And we never had probably campaigns that went for more than maybe 5 sessions. That's a very Dungeon Master specific thing. Anyways, we were going through this passageway that's through a mountain, and it's like an old dwarven hole, you know, Mines of Moria, very healing kind of thing. Like, oh, within this room, you see these gigantic, what you thought were bronze doors at first, but as you investigate them, we're talking like, you know, 10, 15 foot tall doors, double doors. You realize they're made out of adamantine. And I go, adamantine? All right. As soon as we got kind of done with the dungeon, I was like, I'm still thinking about those adamantine doors. It's like, because adamantine's worth a lot of money, because we were playing Pathfinder, I think. It's worth a lot of money, and there's a lot of it here. But obviously, we can't carry massive doors. Those are huge. Like, all right, well, it's totally worthwhile for us to take the money that we have gotten out of this dungeon, out of this adventure, go back to town, and hire people to bring it back for us. Because this is worth like thousands of gold. This is totally worth the time for us to do this. And it was definitely a thing that you could see when I was bringing out the plan to the other players, and everybody was kind of on their head. They're like, yeah, actually that makes a lot of sense. The Dungeon Master's like, oh no, what have I done? What have I done? Like, oh no. They're not only not following the adventure for the moment, they've gone off the rails. They're also about to get incredibly rich off of a throwaway thing that I was just trying to show how impressive this area was. They're like, it was impressive and lucrative. But the way that I like it is like, let's say you get the doors back to the thing. This is the thing where the way that I run things is like, this is why you want a charisma based character in your party. I try to make every ability score as important as I can. We use Constitution a lot for your ability to travel, so Constitution is important. Dex and Wiz are always really important, and those don't need to work. Intelligence is really important, to be like your ability to learn stuff about the world or be able to figure out stuff, especially playing in a game that I play where language is incredibly important. So your ability to decipher what people might say in a language you don't speak, because I don't use the like Star Wars basic common everybody speaks the same language. Like, nope. And in certain areas of the world, people speak variations of roughly similar languages, so you can get by pretty easily if you speak that tongue. But you know, if you travel 200 miles that away, they speak a different language, and it's not one in any way that's familiar to you. So if you go that way, you're gonna have to pay for an interpreter, which is another way to get money out of the player's hands. Like, you're gonna have to find an interpreter, or you guys are gonna spend a bunch of downtime as at least one of you tries to learn the language. You can do as a downtime activity. You can do those sorts of things. But having a charisma-based character within the party, and the way that this works is that I use the standard like 10% value sale price. So if you find something that's worth a goblet that's worth 100 gold when you get it back, if you take it to a shop and you try to resell it, they're like, we're going to give you 10 gold for that. But if you have a charisma based character who's taking the time to barter and do the persuasion checks and talk about it, they can get you up to 50% of it. And generally be like, oh, all right, you have this person who's coming in and you have your bard come and talk it up, add this story to it and add this rich context, which may or may not be true about the item. And be like, so instead of 10 gold, the guy's like, I'll give you 50 gold for it. Great, that's 500% increase over what you would generally get for selling goods. So having a charisma-based character is incredibly lucrative in the type of campaign that I run. You really do want somebody who's do that and be like, you do take the time to barter. It's worthwhile to get these skills and use them because they allow you to do things and get money in a way that you otherwise might not be able to access in the campaign. So having a charisma-based character who's willing to do bartering will always get the party more money. And when I run such a money-poor kind of game, players are really excited to do that usually. Usually it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm definitely going to barter. Definitely want to get the best from that. They'll also be able to do barter with that on, if they're successful, on a one-to-one basis. So it's like, oh, the person's like, I have this goblet, I'll give you 50 gold for it. Or I'll basically give you 100 gold in store credit. I'll make just a fair trade with you because I know I can sell this thing at not a loss. And so I'll give you, if you want to trade this for something in the shop, I'll let you trade it for something in the shop. So you could take this goblet in and be like, hey, can we trade this for 2 healing potions? Yeah, absolutely. Here you go. Here's your 2 healing potions. Here's the goblet. Somebody will definitely want to buy this goblet. I don't have to worry about it. Because I want to mechanically reward those players who play those charisma-based characters and want to show off how persuasive they are without having to do a system in which they steamroll social encounters. Because the way that I roll social encounters or run them is essentially like everybody who is present in that social encounter will be partaking in the social encounter. That I don't run situations where it's like, and then the party all take a step back except for the bard or the sorcerer who steps up and does all the talking. Be like, no, it's weird to have some sort of negotiation or conversation or discussion that's important and be like, only one of your people speaks. Like, people would not want to make a deal with you. They'd be like, why are the 3 or 4 of you being entirely silent? Like, no, you all have to be on the same board. I want to hear from everybody about the situation. I want to make sure all your stories line up and you are all saying the same thing in the same way. So I don't want to create a situation where charisma-based characters like sorcerers and bards are constantly steamrolling social encounters, but I do want to reward them for mechanically paying into that. And the best way that I do that, be like, these are the people who make you a lot of money. They make you 500% as much money most of the time. So they're really useful to have in your party. And you might consider taking a bard. You might consider in a campaign that I'm running to build a bard over a cleric. Yeah, the cleric heals better, but the bard's going to get us a lot more money, and we can shore up all of that healing capability by buying potions very easily. There's lots of different ways to kind of attach that. So let's take a look at the thing itself. We've done enough talking. Let's do a little bit. That's the wrong one. There we go. So this is my minor treasure table. So I basically make a treasure roll for every active PC. We can actually just do this live. Let's say that I was running a solo game. I also use this. So let's do 1d20. Let's say I'm 3rd level. Sure. So I rolled a 10. So I rolled a 10. That means I'm going to get a trade goods. These are the things that happen most of the time. This is what you're going to get most of the time in the table. Right, there's our d20 on the right. Tells us what we're going to roll for it. What type of trade goods are we going to get? 13. So we're going to find a packet of herbs and spices. Another great way. They tend to be worth a lot of money If you're looking for a conversion, there is a conversion, at least in 2014 Player's Handbook. I assume it's in the 2024 one as well. I have it written down, of course, in here, because I have the shopping list in here, as well as things. There's a really, really helpful table that is... There is a trade goods table, and it tells you essentially what a lot of things economically are worth in a D&D style world. So like a pound of wheat's worth a copper. In this instance, if you wanted a pound of cinnamon or pepper, each of those is worth 2 gold. So if you're like, oh, I know that I got 50 golds worth, you go, cool, that's 100 pounds of cinnamon. And again, how are you going to convey that? How are you going to transport it? How are you going to move it? But we're probably not going to roll that much. But let's say, in this instance, it is cinnamon or pepper. Alright, so we know the type it is. We know exactly what it is. So we roll on our adventure tier. I said we're 3rd level, so we're going to roll a d10. I believe it's the d20. I rolled a 4. It helps if I click on the right thing. So I rolled a 4, and it's for whatever this d20 is going to tell us. Worthwhileness of it. And it's scaled. They're more likely to get copper than you are silver, than you are gold, than you are platinum. Originally, the way that I interpreted this was by level, and it's still that way because I haven't changed it. I do generally just let them roll for it now, because then otherwise everything was 1d10, and I found after a little bit of use I was like, that's kind of boring. So I kind of always want them to roll for it. So we rolled an 18. So this was I forgot what I rolled for my d10. Did I roll 3? We'll go with 3. So I rolled 3 or 4, whatever it is, gold pieces. So we know that each of that was a pound. Was how much? So 2 gold for a pound. So if we rolled 3, you know that there's about a pound and a half of pepper or cinnamon there. Gives me a very easy way to drop that in. So you go, oh, that's useful. Now there's other things I do like downtime, and in the campaign we started off utilizing a little bit of this mechanic early on, but the more the campaign's gone on, didn't get a super strong response from my players, so I stopped kind of bringing it up. Is the ability to do basically camp actions, which is do things, is the way that I run exploration. You run into exhaustion very often, and one of the great ways to get around that is give their ability to the quality of your camping or roughing it while you're on the move helps you dictate how difficult travel is. Essentially, it like kind of keeps the morale up. Essentially, it's basically a morale roll. So everybody has an option when they're camping to be like, what is the thing that you do if you want to do something? If you fail it, things are a little bit worse for you. So if you don't want to attempt it, that's fine. You don't have to. And things just go business as usual. If you do want to attempt it, you can do that thing. And if you pass it, then you're going to get some sort of boon from it. Usually it's, you're going to have advantage on one or more of the rolls for the constitution saves into the next day to avoid things like exhaustion, and allows you to make more progress when you're traveling around the world. That's how that rolls. That's how I run that. So when you come across things like herbs and spices, if you have somebody in your party who took the idea that they wanted to take the proficiency with chef's tools or cook's utensils, you're like, oh, so now you have this thing. So this will give you, if you want to use some of this material that you've gotten, you can use some of that in your cooking. And if you do that with your cooking, I'm going to give you advantage on rolling to make a good meal while you're camping because it's really nicely seasoned. So if you do that, then you get to stack those advantages. So you do that, you make a great meal. Everybody loves it. Everybody feels it's a good hot meal at the end of the day. They're ready to take on the adventure tomorrow, and they'll start off with some sort of advantage or disadvantage on increasing the DCs of how exhaustion works throughout the day. So the idea is to like stop using gold and start trying to make things more useful, whether it's value that they then need to carry with them and turn it into money so it can be more broadly useful for them, or it's something that they can use right now and they don't have to take it back to town. They can use it right now and make it useful. I mean, that's pretty much it. So obviously if you roll a 1 through 8 at the beginning, you do the pocket contents table, which is down here, by the way. This is the actual pocket contents table. It's in there. So categories are accessory, EDC, everyday carry stuff, food, random items, money, paper stuff. The banknotes, contracts, just directions, list notes. This is all pretty much the same. I didn't put itinerary on here, though usually I add itinerary. It just breaks the table. And I know what it is. Don't worry about that. We talked about everything here. I think there is one thing that's slightly different on here. Yeah, pocket lamp's different. And the other one I just said light source. But in general, it was supposed to be like a pocket lamp, so like a really, really small oil lamp or like an alcohol lamp, something like that. Very much in EDC. Go down that rabbit trail if you want to see an alcohol lamp. But the idea is still the same. But I was like, yeah, they might have torches on them, depending on the context. I wanted to break it out a little bit, because it didn't make sense for there to be necessarily something like a tiny alcohol lamp maybe on a desk. Like, it makes more sense there's just a lamp on the desk. Otherwise, these are all pretty much the same thing. And there you can see the column that is money. And I'm still futzing a little bit with this. So one of the changes that I think that I am going to continue making worked out thus far. I need to keep stress testing it to see if it will break. Is that I actually rolled for that in the old style way. So if I was rolling for the pepper in the new style way, I would roll the amount of D10s equal to the PC's level, or the average party level of the party. So instead of having like 3, it would be that you'd find 21 gold worth of pepper. And 21 gold worth of pepper is a lot more. That's 10.5 pounds? 10.5 pounds of pepper. So now, instead of being like a small little thing of pepper, now you're like, oh, this is like a big bag of pepper again. Like a bag of flour size pepper, like a larger bag of flour. Okay. So the trade goods are all on the right. They are arms, armor, ammunition, those sorts of things. Arts and decorations, bone, bone, horn, pelts, animal byproducts usually, or animal pieces of animal. Books and writing supplies, building material, so wood and iron and stuff like that, stone, clothing, coffee, tea, tobacco, narcotics, things of that nature, even though narcotics are down here, but their own separate thing. Containers, so you might just find like amphora, or jars, or coffers, or a big chest, or any sort of thing. Which sounds really silly, but hey, when you start using things like encumbrance in the games a little bit more, you're like, oh, when you find a chest, you're like, oh, this is an incredibly utility item. We can start putting treasure in here and carrying it with us, which is not something we could do before. Now we have a container for our treasure. Flour and grain, stuff, foodstuffs, things of that nature, like dry goods. You would also include in here things like rice or dried beans and peas, all sorts of stuff like that. Furniture, tableware, so silver cutlery, candelabra, a really nice chair can be worth a lot of money, or like a armoire. Like, oh, here's a heavy oak armoire. It's probably worth quite a bit of money, but do you really want to carry an armoire through a dungeon and over the hills and through the dales? Probably not. Probably not. That probably stays here. Gemstones and jewelry, talked about. Herbs and spices, ingots and ore. Livestock. Sometimes you can just find animals. And I do this both ways. when I do something like livestock, it's like you can find live animals or you can find butchered animals. So you might find something like a smokehouse that might have like a side of beef in it. Great. I mean, we can make great food right now, and that'll go into being like, if you cook using these rations for camping, it gives you advantage on your ration rolls for the day, or you don't need to make a ration roll for the day. Like you have found enough good usable food right now that you don't need to use your ration, which can break things up, which is really nice. Medicine we talked about, narcotics, same sort of thing, worth a lot of money. Depending on your campaign, there are like substances, if you play like say Pathfinder, that have mechanical benefits. If you want to do that have like basically fantasy narcotics that you can use, and you can also get addicted to. So if you want to play that style of game, this works for that. If you don't, it's still useful. This kind of works like medicines. Like you can find like milk of the poppy, and that works for pain relief, so it's helpful for that aspect, but it's also worth a lot of money. Preserved food, so you might find a huge cache of like pemmican or jarred meat or honey or something that's going to last a long time. 18, religious items. You're going to find what in our context would be like, hey, if you were Vikings landing at Lindisfarne, most of the loot you get here is that stuff. You're taking all the gold and silver crosses and stuff that's on the altar, and all the ewers and goblets and all that stuff, and you're grabbing all that stuff and running off with it. All the I mean, probably not really silk, but lots of good cloth and anything that seems like it's of value, especially like purple cloth and stuff like that. You're gonna grab it and steal it. It would all fall under religious items. And also just basic textiles. You might find, like I said, there is table. The trade goods table is super useful. You should definitely make note of it. That it's in Player's Handbook 2014. I assume it's in 2024. I don't know. I haven't looked for it because I already have that, and I highly doubt that that is one of the things they changed in 2024 reading. It's probably the trade goods table. I can't imagine they did, but you can find it, and it will tell you, hey, how much is a yard of silk? I think it's like 10 gold or something. 1 gold or 10 gold, one of the two. As well as like wool or like hemp or jute, those sorts of things. Like canvas is in there as well. Yeah, silk by the yard is 10 gold. Linen by the yard is 5 gold. Cotton is 5 silver by the yard, and canvas is 1 silver by the yard. So it kind of gives you an idea. So even if you're not using canvas, if you want to use like hessian or jute cloth or something like a sackcloth, very similar, I would use the canvas style, which could also be containers. You might just find a whole bunch of sacks. Gone out. Oh, we're back. We appear to be back. Okay, sorry, we had a little blip. That's all right. We're gonna continue on. All right. Well, I can't tell if we had a full drop. I'm gonna continue on as if things are the same. If not, I know what I'll do. Anyways, really? Okay, here we go. Right back on. I'm sorry. Man, I'm gonna blame the World Cup as the reason for everything internet being terrible this week. So I think this will continue, unfortunately. But that is the situation we're in. But you can also get, I was gonna say that you can also get magic items in here. So there is a chance that you will get magic items as well as just hard currency. Hard currency, same thing. You come down here, you just roll for whatever the currency is using the tables. If you want to get the magic items are down here. I break them up. Magic items by adventure tier. And you roll a d20 here. So let's say that we had rolled a magic item. I want to know what my 3rd level character is going to get. I rolled that. I rolled a 15. So 1 through 14 would have been a common item, which means that I got an uncommon item. Nice. And as you go up through the party levels, you're more likely to get more powerful stuff. We're getting an uncommon item, and then there's a slightly different table that I use, which has mostly the same stuff in here. Worth kind of pull. I suppose it is. There's basically a D10 or D20, very similar to, structured very similarly to this table down here. I think it's going to be some sort of potion or spell scroll or something of that nature. Definitely going to be that. Lose internet connection all over the place. The stream's just dropping like crazy.